In the grand bureaucracy of the Galactic Council, where forms are processed in triplicate and entire star systems have gone extinct, waiting for their paperwork to clear, there existed a certain memo. This memo, titled Directive 42 FG, Re-Earthlings, had one very specific instruction. Do not, under any circumstances, let humans venture beyond Pluto. Failure to comply could result in galactic-scale unpleasantness. The memo was, of course, dispatched with all due urgency, by which we mean it was sent as an interstellar fax, bouncing through the galactic ether like a particularly lazy pigeon. The issue, however, was that Earth in the late 20th century didn't have the technology to read interstellar faxes. The wow signal received by a lonely radio telescope in Ohio was the closest anyone came to noticing it. But the operator simply wrote, interesting, in his logbook and went for lunch. By the time humans actually got their act together and started exploring the outer reaches of their solar system, the Galactic Council had all but forgotten about the memo. Bureaucratic amnesia is a surprisingly common condition in the galaxy. Fast forward a few centuries, and humanity had reached the point where Star Trek reruns, budget space dramas, and countless alien-themed comic books had convinced them that they were ready for the great cosmic stage. Armed with optimism, duct tape, and a complete misunderstanding of alien etiquette, they cheerfully ignored the non-existent warning and sent out their first deep space expedition. The ship in question, the Intrepid Optimist, was a second-hand freighter retrofitted with lasers that could barely toast a marshmallow, and a crew whose training primarily consisted of binge-watching Doctor Who. The ship's AI, affectionately named Jeff, was a repurposed toaster oven with delusions of grandeur. It was during a routine survey of the Kuiper Belt that humanity's first encounter with intelligent alien life occurred. The aliens, the Quamlaxians, were a species known across the galaxy for their calm demeanor, sophisticated diplomacy, and incredibly sensitive noses. Their ship, a gleaming silver disk the size of a small moon, shimmered into view like a cosmic Fabergé egg. On board the Intrepid Optimist, Captain Lisa Hart was mid-argument with Jeff about the toaster setting when the Quamlaxian ship loomed in front of them. She squinted at the screen and muttered, I think it's a giant frisbee." The Quamlaxians, who had been sent to investigate the inexplicable absence of a human quarantine zone, were expecting a primitive species barely capable of stringing two coherent thoughts together. What they got instead was a crew that greeted them with an overly enthusiastic, "Well, it's about time. We've been waiting for you guys for decades. You've got free Wi-Fi, right?" The Quamlaxian emissary, Ilfrinx 9, descended onto the Intrepid Optimist with the poise of a galactic diplomat, but was immediately overwhelmed by the humans' bizarre behavior. "Welcome to our ship," Captain Hart beamed, extending a hand for a handshake. Ilfrinx stared at the outstretched appendage, uncertain whether it was a greeting or a challenge. He opted to sniff it, which resulted in an awkward 5 minutes of cultural miscommunication, during which one crew member tried to explain the concept of deodorant while another offered Ilfrinx a cheeseburger. By the time Ilfrinx managed to explain that humanity was in violation of Galactic Directive 42 FG, he was promptly drowned out by a crew member showing him a YouTube compilation of kittens wearing space helmets. The Quamlaxians, whose primary weakness was an uncontrollable fondness for cute things, were utterly unprepared for the sheer absurdity of human culture. "Wait," Ilfrinx finally said, struggling to regain control of the situation. "You mean to tell me you never received the memo?" "What memo?" Captain Hart asked, sipping from a coffee mug labeled Galaxy's Best Captain. "The one telling you to stay on your planet," Ilfrinx snapped, his usually serene demeanor cracking. "You humans are not supposed to be out here." "Well, Hart said with a shrug. That's your fault for not sending it properly. Ever heard of email? Ilfrinx groaned, realizing that this was going to be far more complicated than he anticipated. Meanwhile, elsewhere on the ship, a curious crew member had accidentally sent a signal from the Intrepid Optimist's radio beacon. The signal contained a mixtape of 1980s power ballads, cat memes, and for reasons no one could quite explain, an entire episode of the Golden Girls. Within minutes, the Quamlaxians' communication channels were flooded with other alien species, demanding to know what on Zorblat Prime was going on. "Humans," Ilfrinx muttered, pinching the bridge of his tentacled nose. "This is why we left that memo." As Ilfrinx tried to figure out how to diplomatically return the humans to their solar system without causing a diplomatic crisis, Jeff the Toaster AI announced, "Incoming message from the Galactic Council. They seem angry." Captain Hart grinned. "Great, let's give them a call. I've got so many questions about how to find the best space tacos." The Quamlaxians stared in horror, realizing that humanity's presence in the galaxy was about to turn into the most chaotic diplomatic incident in galactic history. The Quamlaxians' warning, delivered with all the gravitas of a cosmic traffic cop, went largely ignored. After all, once humanity discovered there was an entire universe of aliens out there, no amount of stern tentacle waving was going to stop them. Besides, Captain Lisa Hart reasoned, if we weren't supposed to be here, someone would have sent us a proper warning, like a strongly worded letter, or at least a tweet. And so the Intrepid Optimist continued its journey through the cosmos, blissfully unaware that they were becoming the single greatest nuisance in galactic history. The next species the humans encountered was the Blorpians, a gelatinous race that communicated entirely through interpretive dance and raspberry noises. Their ships were organic, pulsating blobs that squelched uncomfortably when touched, which immediately prompted the humans to nickname them Space Jello. As the Blorpian ambassador oozed onto the Intrepid Optimist, it wobbled indignantly, trying to convey its disapproval through an elaborate series of jiggles and wet plopping sounds. "Captain," Jeff the AI interjected, "I believe the Blorpian is saying we are violating the sacred boundaries of their territory." "Oh," Hart said. "Well, tell them we're very sorry, and also, can they teach us how to make their ships? They'd make great bounce houses." Jeff translated this sentiment into a series of garbled static and flashing lights, which the Blorpian interpreted as an insult to its great-grandmother. It retaliated by splattering a portion of itself onto the ship's walls, which was either a declaration of war or an offer to help with insulation. It was hard to tell. By the end of the encounter, the Blorpians had retreated in frustration, leaving behind a gelatinous puddle and a stern warning that humans were definitely not supposed to be out here. Hart, naturally, took this as an invitation to explore even further. A week later, the Intrepid Optimist stumbled into the territory of the Flibertians, a race of hyper-intelligent sentient birds with an obsession for bureaucracy. Their ships resembled enormous filing cabinets, and their crew wore tiny spectacles perched on their beaks. The Flibertian diplomat, Chirp-Tweet 492, greeted the humans with a clipboard and a scowl. "Excuse me," it chirped, "but you appear to lack the appropriate Form 96T for unauthorized interstellar travel. How do you explain this oversight?" Captain Hart squinted at the bird. "Wait, you guys have paperwork for space exploration?" "Of course," Chirp-Tweet 492 snapped, flapping its wings indignantly. "You can't just fly around the galaxy willy-nilly. There are rules." "Well, we don't have any forms," Hart said, crossing her arms, "so unless you have a galactic DMV where we can stand in line for 6 hours, I think we're good." The Flibertians squawked in collective horror and spent the next 2 hours attempting to forcibly educate the humans on the importance of proper interstellar documentation. The humans responded by showing the Flibbertians Earth's filing system, an utter mess of post-it notes, coffee-stained forms, and inexplicably, a shoebox labeled "Important Stuff." By the time the Flibbertians fled in a flurry of panicked feathers, they had declared humanity a dangerous, lawless species with no respect for intergalactic order. The humans' next encounter was with the Snurglecs, a race of beings who resembled oversized potatoes with arms and had the unfortunate habit of speaking entirely in riddles. When the Snurglec ambassador boarded the ship, it waved its stubby arms dramatically and said, "I speak only to those who can answer my question. What has no beginning, no end, and yet cannot be ignored?" "Easy," said First Officer Raj Patel. "The theme song to Gilligan's Island." The Snurglec blinked, clearly not expecting such a quick reply. "That is technically correct," it admitted, "but you are still trespassing in forbidden space." "Forbidden," Hart said. "We thought it was a poorly signposted. Big difference." The Snurglec attempted to explain the seriousness of the situation, but was promptly distracted by one of the crew offering it a French fry. It was later discovered that Snurglecs are extremely susceptible to deep-fried potatoes, and the ambassador left with a sack of fries and a vague sense of unease about humanity's lack of self-preservation instincts. Finally, the humans encountered the Grontorians, a race of 8-foot-tall reptilian warriors who lived for combat and revered strength above all else. When the Grontorian captain hailed the intrepid optimist, he immediately demanded a duel to the death. No thanks," Hart said, "but we've got laser tag if you're interested." The Grontorian captain, Cragthar the Mighty, was so confused by this response that he reluctantly agreed. 20 minutes later, he was running through the intrepid optimist's corridors, cackling gleefully as he fired a neon-pink laser gun at the humans. By the end of the encounter, Cragthar had declared the humans worthy adversaries, though he still insisted they leave Grontorian space immediately. "Thanks for the advice, but we're just going to keep exploring," Hart said, patting Cragthar on the arm. "Don't worry, we'll keep in touch." Cragthar stared at her in stunned silence. "You are not supposed to be out here." Hart grinned. "Yeah, we get that a lot." In a cavernous hall filled with representatives from every species in the galaxy, chaos reigned. The humans' exploits had become the talk of the cosmos, and the Council was inundated with complaints, reports, and, oddly, fan mail. "This is a disaster," Ilfrinx 9 wailed, addressing the Council. "We told them not to leave their planet. They're a menace." "And yet," said a Snurglec representative, munching on a French fry, "they are strangely compelling." The debate raged on, but one thing was clear. Humanity's accidental foray into the galaxy was only just beginning, and the universe was in for a wild ride. The Galactic Council's chamber was in a state of pandemonium, which, given it was filled with over 300 species ranging from gaseous clouds to hyper-evolved hamsters, was really saying something. Reports of human misadventures poured in from every corner of the galaxy. The Blorpians were still scrubbing humanity's cultural exchange playlist, which included "Never Gonna Give You Up" from their organic ships. The Flibbertians had reluctantly added a human clause to their bureaucracy, which essentially boiled down to just let them do whatever they want. It's less paperwork. The Snurglecs had stopped speaking in riddles entirely after receiving a shipment of all-you-can-eat fries from Earth. And Cragthar the Mighty, he now had a subscription to Earth's best laser tag equipment. "I can't take it anymore," Ilfrinx 9 groaned, his tentacles slumping in defeat. "They've broken every rule, ignored every warning, and somehow managed to make friends with half the species out there." "We've tried everything," added Chirp Tweet 492, still ruffled from its last encounter with humans. "Sanctions, diplomacy, even threats. Nothing works." The room fell silent as every species stared at the holographic display in the center of the chamber. It showed Earth's latest transmission, a cheerful video of Captain Lisa Hart waving from the intrepid optimist, holding what she called the galaxy's first interspecies bake-off aboard her ship. Behind her, a Blorpian ambassador, a Grontorian warrior, and a Flabertian bureaucrat were enthusiastically sampling a plate of cookies. "They're unrelenting," Ilfrinx muttered, completely heedless of decorum, protocol, or common sense. "And yet," the Snurglek representative said, nibbling on a donut, "they're oddly charming." The council debated for hours, but no one could come up with a solution to the human problem. Finally, the chair of the council, an ancient amorphous blob known as the Great Splue, let out a deep, resonant sigh. "We've tried to keep them out. We've tried to send them back. They are like space lint. No matter how hard you try, they just stick around," the Great Splue said, its voice rippling through the chamber. "Perhaps it is time to do the unthinkable." The room gasped collectively. A sentient fern fainted. "You don't mean," Ilfrinx began. "Yes," the Great Splue said solemnly. "We make them members of the galactic community." A week later, Captain Lisa Hart and her crew stood on the council's grand dais, surrounded by every species in the galaxy. The ceremony was supposed to be a dignified affair, but it quickly devolved into chaos when a Grontorian spilled punch on a Flabertian's stack of forms, and a Blorpian started jiggling in what humans could only describe as the wobble dance. Lisa Hart, dressed in her formal captain's hoodie, grinned at the crowd. "Wow, this is such an honor. We'll try not to screw it up too badly." "Unlikely," Ilfrinx muttered under his breath. As the official document was signed, a holographic seal of approval flashed above them, declaring Earth a member of the galactic community. The humans cheered, while the council collectively sighed. As the humans celebrated, the Great Splue addressed the council. "Well, it's done. They're one of us now. What's the worst that could happen?" As the humans left the galactic chambers, they all yelled in one motion, "Humanity, fuck yeah!" Every alien gasped, as they now knew these humans weren't going anywhere away from them anytime soon. In an entirely unrelated incident, humans accidentally caused a wormhole to open in the middle of council space. The wormhole led to a dimension populated entirely by sentient lawn gnomes, who immediately declared war on the galaxy for disrespecting the art of decorative gardening. The humans, of course, found this hilarious and promptly sold the gnomes plastic flamingos to diversify their aesthetic. Meanwhile, Captain Lisa Hart was busy organizing the galaxy's first karaoke competition. Ilfrinx 9 was drafted into judging and spent the entire event listening to humans belt out Bohemian Rhapsody with the enthusiasm of a species that had absolutely no sense of shame. As Ilfrinx watched the humans dance, sing, and generally wreak cheerful havoc on galactic norms, he let out a long, weary sigh. "Perhaps we underestimated them," he admitted. The Great Splue bubbled in agreement. "They may be a chaotic, unpredictable, and mildly terrifying species, but they do make excellent cookies." And with that, the galaxy reluctantly embraced humanity's presence, knowing full well that things would never be the same again. The end, or knowing humans, probably not.